Okay, so this is Black Knowledge Matters. We're glad that you could join us. Glad to see Sister Michelle and Minister Alicia and Brother Bill and Brother Shango, Sister Mona, Sister Kanke is there, and Baba Jeff, Brother Malik, and Minister Ahmadi, and Sister Asata. So Sister Tony was the first one, I believe, Sister Tony and Sister Asata. And Sister Tony made me watch a video of Ted Cruz. And yeah, it was, well, she thought I needed to see it. And
that's what your peeps in Texas have to deal with, right?
Yeah. You know, I got enough of Ted Cruz when I used to watch the Munsters, you know, yes. Grandpa Munster, you know, doesn't he look like him? All right. So today we're going to talk about critical race theory. And, you know, I would see that term, you know, just be in the news, critical race theory. And, you know, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Critical race theory. And, you know, it was kind of nebulous. You know, did that mean, I heard somebody say that, hey, you know what? Critical race theory deals with upper division college courses.
Law school too. And
yes. And, you know, it had nothing to do with what they're teaching in elementary school or high school.
Exactly.
But if you watch MSNBC or if you watch various people on the media and social media, you know, they've confused the issue, and that's what Tony was sharing with me. That's what she was pointing out. I'm having a little fun with it, but that's what she was pointing out. You know, it's like, my goodness, it doesn't even have anything to do with what people are talking about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we begin, is there anything that anyone wants to say about the issue? There's, you know, we'll open it up for a few minutes before we get into the meat of what we're talking about. Okay, anyone? Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I'm Imhotep, everyone.
Uncle Jobson.
Just real quick, before I started going to WOZE, which was probably 1999.
My goodness.
At WOZE Oakland, I was doing study groups with, just real quick, study groups with Baba Jahi, Baba Greg, Brother Calvin, and Baba Nantambu. And some other people I can think of, but that was 99. But before I started going to WOZE, when I was just living, me and my, Tion had gotten married. We were probably married like 2 years, 3 years. I was going to Marcus Books, and you probably can't see this, but I was going to Faces at the Bottom of the Well, Dr. Derek Bell. I was going to see him at Marcus Books constantly. I got a stack of books here. You can't see them. The stack of books, and they're all signed by Derek Bell, because every time I went there, he was speaking to this whole issue of critical race theory.
In what year?
This was, I went there from 92 to 98. And I got, what, 5 books of his. And he discussed this theory of critical race theory, but he didn't talk about it in an academic way. He spoke to it in terms of stories. So you probably saw, he's famous for Space Traders. And so anyway, I just wanted to make the point that, yeah, for me, I was brought to this whole thing through, you know, reading all of these books and seeing him in person at Marcus Books and him talking about this issue, but not in the context of an academic theory, but in the working realities of African people's lives. So, so I really appreciate you having this discussion. That's it.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you. That's very interesting to know. That's one of the people that, go ahead, Bobbin Daly, go ahead.
I would say, you know, not that I'm a specialist in this area at all, but critical race theory probably dates back to the 70s and 80s. And I think narratives or stories were are an important dimension to this. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that some people would critique it. But last week when I presented, I mentioned the term hegemony, and this is a strong element of discussion in critical race theory, because the idea is, how do people challenge domination? And or if you look at critical theory, more importantly, before critical race theory, it's grounded in the sociology of critical theory, which is a challenge to the power structure. And how do we understand the liberative or liberation qualities as opposed to enslavement qualities that the society can entrap us in? And I know that that's a very elementary contribution, but
no, that's right on, and it's right on the subject. You and Jeff, no, that's excellent. Just by the way, did you get the video that I sent? You know, your video from your class? Did you see it?
No, I didn't, but I will.
Okay.
I will look for it.
I thought I texted, but
okay.
And we'll talk, but check and see. Sometimes my phone acts up. Anyone else want to speak about this? Anyone else? Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
I've been following what's going on in Virginia, and instead of it being a governor's race, talking about the government issues type things for the state, it has turned itself into being a school board race going on. And this opponent is talking about how the school is going to be impacted. And I'm saying, where is this coming from? Obviously, him and others have no idea what critical race theory is. And that's what I'm so fascinated about. They're clueless on it. That's my thing.
Well, you know what? This is no different than any other thing. It took the Panthers and student protests in the 60s to get Black studies.
Right.
And they never wanted that to happen. And they've always been fighting against that. They've always been fighting against things that deal with Black studies. So this is just a way, yes, to try to do away with Black studies on the university level and on all levels of public and private education. Here in Sacramento, a letter was sent to a private school, to one of the major funding portions of that school, because they didn't want critical race theory taught in the school. So this is something that really isn't new, but it's a new approach to it. It's a new tactic, and there are think tanks that meet, and they strategize, and they determine what they need to do. I hate to use this term. This is probably a term we all grew up with within our households, our parents or grandparents. The old devil is quite busy, is always busy, so. How many have heard that in there?
And yesterday.
That's right. We just said that. So, yeah. So, things they want to, they don't want people to know. And then you have Black people that want to argue for them. They put Black people there and they argue for them, which is really maddening, really confusing. Anyone else? Go ahead, Bob and Daly. Go ahead. And then Malik, go ahead.
And I would say also, one of the things, since schools are in the fray or in the mix, so to speak, and there is an effort in some schools, such as Texas particularly, and I'm from Texas, where there has always been an effort to monitor what's included in the textbooks or what's taught in classes. And that becomes significant pedagogically speaking, but also those people who work in government-funded museums, such as the African American Museum and Library at Oakland, which is a city-owned facility. And so this can have an impact upon visitation if it is perceived that that we are engaged in critical race theory, and there's no way that we're going to tell an elementary or even a high school student anything about the overlapping or the intersectionality of looking at and analyzing the society in terms of the law.
That's the second time. So you mentioned that word, pedagogy. That's how I pronounce it. And
it's one of my favorite terms.
Yes. So I just want to, there's a book that you all here in this Zoom might be interested in. It's called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Excellent.
By
Excellent.
By Ferrer. Is it Ferrer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pablo.
Oh, so you know what? Why did I even? You guys already know. But that's an excellent book. He's a Brazilian, right?
Yes.
Right. Not an African, but a Brazilian, and it's a very good work. I found out about it in the 90s. So, anyone else would like to contribute before we get in? I just have a little PowerPoint, but.
He could be African because the largest Black population outside of Africa is in Brazil.
He is, but when you see his picture, you say, okay, it's a different phenotype. You know what I mean?
It could be just passive.
Oh, that's true. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Malik.
Yes, just to add to what's already been eloquently stated. I mean, we know why the critical race theory, at least the critics of it, because it attempts to unveil the false history, the falsification of history by so-called white scholars and white historians. And so critical race theory, presents a threat, because white supremacy, the false doctrine, it wants to control all access to power and information. It wants to control the narrative. And it wants to basically whitewash history, and so the truth is rejected, cannot be taught in schools. Now it's become so politicized that, like Shango was saying, that politicians run on how they are going to prevent critical race theory from being manifested in schools. We got to protect white fragility. And when you think about the 1619 Project, why it was so widely attacked and criticized, and even the, I always forget the sister's name. I never could think about the sister's name. But when she was trying to become a tenured professor at her alma mater, I think it was North Carolina, University of North Carolina. She wound up going to Howard, as a matter of fact, because of the the fallout. So it's not something that we should, overlook or minimize, because obviously they're on a full frontal attack against this very
Nicole Hannah Jones, Jeff has put into the chat. Also, I would like
Jeff always does it because I always forget her name. I know it's 3 names, and I always get them out of sequence, so I'm always afraid to say it. I probably should write it down. But it's important. But the last thing I'll say about critical race theory, it's incumbent upon us as parents, grandparents, uncles, family members to teach our children the truth. Truth cannot be co-opted unless we become, co-conspirators ourselves. We have enough information available to us. So when our children return from the killing fields, to give them all the information and resources that they need, to press on. And let this be this imagination and this of white people to deal with, and not get caught up in this this panic of teaching the truth. If we can't teach the truth, then these institutions that we're sending our children to, they serve no other purpose but to solidify, advance, protect white privilege, white nationalism, and the false doctrine of white supremacy.
All right, let's take up a collection, and we're going to, all right. So,
I just wanted to
go ahead.
add that I think one reason that it's that there's so much effort put into it now, critical race theory, the attacks against it, attacks against students wearing their natural hair in school, and keeping some of true history out of books, is because the European population is decreasing. Their numbers are going down. Asians, I believe, are the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States. So they see that, they see the handwriting on the wall, that they're going to be outnumbered greatly by Asians, Africans, and Latinx populations. So they're trying to grab whatever control they can to make it seem like they are supreme, that they are on the top, and trying to keep control.
That's a very good observation. Anyone else before we press on? Anyone else? Well, these are all great comments. I'm glad to be within your midst, to be among you, even if it's a cyber thing. Well, let me just share my screen, and we can get on here. But first, a song. No, just kidding. All right, so so we're going to talk about critical race theory. Critical race theory is our topic. And we're going to use some of the works by actual lawyers, because that's what it's about. It's not about, teaching a history in the elementary school. It's actually has to do with racism and the law as it applies to Black people and other non-white people. Maybe we shouldn't use that word people of color, because it's not far from saying colored people. But Neely Fuller Jr. Referred to white people and non-white people. And so as Mama Fania pointed out, the white people are concerned that there are going to be more non-white people in this country. So we're going to look at the works of Judge Higginbotham in the matter of color. He wrote this book, I believe in the 70s, Race and the American Legal Process, the Colonial Period. We're also going to look at a bit of this book that was written by Bruce Wright, Judge Bruce Wright. He wrote this book in the 80s, I believe, and it was entitled Black Robes, White Justice: Why Our Legal System Doesn't Work for Blacks. And this is Judge Wright. It's a picture of Judge Wright here. Now, Sister Tony, you are absolutely right when you sent me that video, and it was confusing. And so it's meant to confuse us. And so the word I want to start out with is obfuscate. Obfuscate, meaning to make something difficult to understand, to make obscure, to be evasive, unclear, or confusing. So I know everyone knows this, but I just want to say it anyway. To obfuscate something means to make it so that it isn't clear, it's not transparent, it's much like dirty water makes it hard to see the bottom of a pond. You know, to make something difficult to see, to conceal something, to make something difficult to see or understand. It beclouds issues, it befogs, it blurs, it clouds, it confuses, it fogs, it muddies. So that's what this issue has become. It's obfuscated. So this evening, we want to clarify. We want to clear it up. We want to illuminate critical race theory. So if you notice in the chat, Brother Bill has put a number of definitions in the chat for us. And so, you know, at the conclusion of this, you might want to save the chat. But this actually comes from Wikipedia. And I think some of the things that Bill was putting was from Wikipedia. So these are the definitions. Critical race theory is a body of legal scholarship and an academic movement of U.S. civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race and U.S. law and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. Critical race theory examines social, cultural, and legal issues primarily as they relate to race and racism in the United States. A tenet of critical race theory is that racism and disparate racial outcomes are the result of complex and changing and often subtle social institutional dynamics rather than explicit and intentional prejudices of individuals. And as someone has pointed out earlier, it originated in the mid-70s in the writings of several American legal scholars, including Derek Bell, which Baba Jeff has mentioned, Alan Freeman, Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado. You'll see his name a lot when you do searches on this. Cheryl Harris, Charles Lawrence III, Mari Masuda, Patricia Williams. It emerged as a movement by the 1980s, reworking theories of critical legal studies with much more focus on race. Critical race theory is grounded in and draws from thinkers such as Antonio Gramsci, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, as well as the Black Power, Chicano, and radical feminist movement from the 1960s and 70s. I kind of miss the Chicano movement. I grew up with people that were Chicanos, and they were proud of that. I recognize that when it's used in Mexico, it's more of a derogatory term, but people that were radical and resolute and rebelling against the system, a lot of those people were Chicanos. I miss my Chicano friends. So critical race theory, scholars view race and white supremacy as an intersectional and social construct that advances the interest of white people at the expense of persons of other races. In the field of legal studies, critical race theory emphasizes that formally colorblind law can still have racial discriminatory outcomes. And several lawmakers, conservative lawmakers have sought to ban or restrict or, they really come out and attacked it. And I'm not going to play the video that Sister Tony sent me, but there's a video that Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz, I want to ask him, did his mama like him? So, it was just complete lies, fabrication, distortions of the issues. And so he sent it out to his constituents and all other conservatives. And this is what they lap up and eat up without critically analyzing. So there's definitions. It goes back to 1994, a collection of critical stances against the existing legal order from a race-based point of view. More specifically, race is a social construct, and racism is neither an individual bias nor prejudice, but rather embedded in the legal system and supplemented with policies and procedures. Richard Delgado, co-founder of the theory, defined it in 2017 as a collection of activists and scholars interested in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism, and power. So I'm going to stop there. And if there's any questions or comments that you would like to mention at this time, you can go ahead. Or not. Yes, now if you want to talk, you have to take mute off.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to disappear, right. But I'm just going to close the blinds. Okay, keep talking. I can hear you.
Okay. Among the writers that you had mentioned was Antonio Gramsci. He was an Italian, I think, student of philosophy or political science. And of course, in his writings, we get the idea or the concept of hegemony or domination. And so his works are very critical or very important to this discussion of domination and how people find ways to get around domination, because no hegemony is a lived experience, but it's never complete, it's never total, because people find ways of pushing against it. And especially if they are freedom-seeking people, they have a desire to find ways of getting around it. And so when I was speaking about the sisterhood last week, how did they get around? I mean, they were good Catholics, and they wanted to emphasize that they were good Catholics, but they were also good adherents to candomblé, the African-derived religions in Brazil. And so, yeah, Gramsci is very important to this discussion.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for helping me out with the pronunciation of that name, because I hadn't.
And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Oh, you probably are. You probably are. I had never seen that name, so it's different. Anyone else? Go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. Off of mute though.
Yes, I wanted to add another point, but this is probably a little bit off the side, but it was mentioned over the past 2 weeks. I think Minister Alicia was invoked with respect to, I think you invoked her name when you were talking about Dr. Amos Wilson. And I feel like he's important in this conversation, because the reason why or at least my opinion of why there's such an outrage of critical race theory, it's psychology. There's a deep, and this is one of my personal obsessions, so I'll just admit that. I feel like psychology completely gets, I won't say completely, but I will say is oftentimes pushed to the side. I mean, I understand all the politics and everything, but there's a deep, 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 deep psychology with white people, and we have our own deep, deep, deep psychology, and that's why I'm at WOZE, because I'm trying to shed a lot of that psychology that I still have to fight through. There's all those impulses that were pushed upon me when I was young, and I'm still working on it. But there's a deep psychology, because they're using critical race theory because psychologically they can't handle it. It's not because it's impacting their money. It's not like it's a psychological, it's searing into their spirit. That's what causes them so much pain. It's that feeling of we're losing control. And I wish that, and I'm sorry for the phones ringing. I got of course, people always call you when you're into something. But anyway, the point I want to make is the deep psychology that I think we really need to keep integrating into this conversation, because that is exactly why just everyday white people are going to school boards. Yes, they're being funded and all that stuff, but it's easy for them to go, even because they're being funded, but more importantly, because they're totally freaked out. And that's why I'm concerned, because the psychology, and then when you bring in the Facebook component, because it's the constant, getting their minds all wound up around, oh, you're getting ready. And that's when I think it was Sister Mama Fania, when she's talking about the demographic shift. That's another driver of this deep psychological moment where they're like, oh no, we're losing it. So to me, it's psychology that's at play here. And even though we're talking about critical race theory and it's academic and it can be highfalutin and all that, it really is just everyday deep psychology of somebody feeling inferior when all along they've been telling us that we're inferior. That's it.
Oh, it's very good. Anyone else before we press on? Minister Ahmadi, I feel like you're going to be leaving in 14 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, I agree. Yeah, I wanted to say this. Yes, Brother Jeffrey, I agree 100%. And speaking about Amos Wilson, this is what he said. He said, forget about the white man and just do you. And I think that that's what we got to always keep it in perspective when we're dealing with things like this, that as long as we stay clear and focused and, committed, we inevitably will overturn this stuff. We inevitably will get the victory that Ma'at will prevail. And I just think that whenever we're dealing with this virulent opposition, and this intense, it's because they're hanging on to something that they know is dying, and they're fighting against history, and they're really the underdog, just like they've been, like you said, Brother Jeff. They say that they feign superiority when really they're dealing with an inferiority complex. And so we just have to be clear. I'll just kind of say that. I'll leave it at that. As long as we're clear, we'll get this thing done. As long as we stay focused and undeterred or distracted by their vain efforts, which ultimately will not prevail.
I during the anti-apartheid movement, I was hanging out with this brother that was from South Africa. He had just left the struggle, and he was with a friend of mine at UC Davis, and we did a lot of things. He came to WOSE, he spoke at WOSE, and his name was Kansani. And you'd ask Kansani, well, what do you think about the apartheid, and he would reply, he said, well, what we're seeing are the last kicks of a dying boar. He would say that. And yes, these are, people are flailing, there's people that are claiming privilege, but they're actually no better than Black people, on the to the 1%.
Right.
They're in some respects they're worse off than most Black people that but it's the illusion of privilege and prestige. So we're gonna press on. Glad Bobby Waters could join us. Glad to see you, Bobby. All right. So where was I? Not here. So let's see.
Hello. Thank
Hello.
you.
All right. Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. Who's that?
Hi, Minister Imhotep. This is Judy Gresham from Atlanta.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I know I'm interrupting. I wanted to make a comment, but I can wait until the next segment. I'm driving, and I'm calling from my car while I'm on the interstate.
Go ahead. We're flexible. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to add to what the brother just said. I really think, now for me, I've lately become somewhat of a scholar of Booker T. Washington.
Yes.
And I really do believe that we just, it's really just staying focused on our goal. I don't think we really have well, I don't even have to say I don't think, but we don't have any real united goals or focuses that we could work on. And I'm thinking, for example, even with HBCUs, all of the students now are protesting. We were on a call earlier and a sister got on who was, very emotional about what the students are going through and, this and that. And I'm working with Tuskegee and they have a housing issue. And just for example, even with HBCUs, that could be a united front that we could work toward. I think that if we just focus on something and do it instead of worrying about the racism, we have enough power amongst ourselves, especially with our dollars. And that's the economic power. That's our power to do something. If we ever could just get a united goal that everybody, and it may sound a little idealistic, but I don't think it's that difficult. I think the HBCU effort, bringing HBCUs together and students, could be a great movement that would wake a lot of people up. So anyway, that's my quick comment. I know it wasn't quick, but thank you.
No, that's a very good comment. And in the 90s, I know that he's been vilified and a pariah now in the media, but Bill Cosby with his show, The Cosby Show, and the show A Different World, actually got people excited, and they had a serious increase in enrollment in HBCUs, and even with Spike's movie School Days, it it had, and they dealt with critical issues that were facing Black people. And
Right.
but sometimes I have to say, sometimes our HBCUs, they are controlled by others. And so some of the most radical people that are there at HBCUs had to leave, i.e. Nathan Hare, who went to San Francisco State and started Black Studies, first Black Studies department in the United States. Francis Cress Welsing had to leave Howard, etc. So
Ackland Lynch.
I'm sorry?
Ackland Lynch.
I'm not familiar with that. Who's that, Shango?
He was also a professor at Howard University around the time that Professor Nair was there.
All right, all right.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I know I have an organization called Tuskegee Seeds of Greatness, and we're working on some think tanks and with a group of alumni, and I really want to look at the possibilities of a theme of just ownership, ownership, and the alumni just doing a takeover and taking over and stop being so dependent on waiting on these board of trustees. Every school and students are having the same issue, alumni with the board of trustees not representing, the interests that we feel they should. But it seems to me that we have enough resources, expertise to just really believe that we can do for self. And if we come together, we can. That's just my thoughts. And HBCUs are really in the media now. Everywhere you look, they've, since Kamala Harris, whatever that be about. We're hearing a lot.
That and athletes, children. For instance, Shaq, his sons are going to HBCU, and other athletes, their children are going to HBCU. So that's something that we can focus on. That's another rallying. It's something that's positive with respect to HBCUs. I'm glad you brought that up, Judy. I'm gonna keep going. You be safe out there on the road.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. I'll be home shortly. Thank you.
All right. You can chime in, but just be safe out there. I don't want to hear any. We don't want to go to Kaiser today. All right. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So just moving on the critical race theory, the history, early analysis of the latter consolidated into critical race theory developed in the 70s as legal scholars, activists, lawyers tried to understand why. This is what they were trying to understand, why civil rights era victories had stalled and were being eroded. They had won Brown versus Board of Education. They had won other cases, but wasn't really making advancement. And in the early 1980s, students of color at Harvard University organized protests regarding Harvard's lack of diversity in the curriculum among students and in the faculty. And these students supported Professor Derek Bell, who had resigned his position at Harvard because of what he viewed as the university's discriminatory practices. Bell left Harvard in 1980 and then became the dean at the University of Oregon School of Law. And during his time at Harvard Law, Bell had developed new courses that studied American law through a racial lens. Harvard students of color wanted faculty of color to teach these new courses in his absence, and the university rejected the students' request, responding that no sufficiently qualified Black instructors existed. Legal scholar Randall Kennedy writes that some of the students felt affronted by Harvard's choice to employ an archetypical white liberal in a way that precludes the development of Black leadership. So, you know, this is the history of it. And so people came in and developed alternative courses using Bell's Race, Racism, and American Law that came in 1993. So they have some common themes: critique of liberalism, critical race theory scholars question the foundational liberal concepts such as enlightenment, rationalism, legal equality, constitutional neutrality. They challenge the incrementalist approach of traditional civil rights discourse. They favor a race-conscious approach to social transformation, critiquing liberal ideas such as affirmative action, color blindness, role modeling, merit or the merit principle, with an approach that relies more on political organizing, in contrast to liberalism reliance on rights-based remedies. So the slaves had escaped and were freeing themselves, and the people that were more concerned with the incarceration of the imagination and the incarceration of education, they wasn't going to stand for that. So, you know, different things were happening. So these are the history of it. There's some common themes. You know, I couldn't go into all of them, but the common themes are critique of liberalism. Brother Bamidele mentioned storytelling, counter storytelling, naming one's own reality. We can't have that, naming one's own reality. Revisionist interpretations of American civil rights law and progress, criticism of civil rights scholarship and anti-discrimination laws such as Brown versus the Board of Education, intersectional theory. So there's a lot to this, and none of this is being talked about. Some more common themes: standpoint epistemology, essentialism and anti-essentialism, structural determinism, empathetic fallacy, non-white cultural nationalism / separatism, internationalism, influence of critical legal studies. So there's so much to this, and I grabbed these. There's a couple of slides on this. Critical race theory, type of legal scholarship that emerged in the 1980s, calling for critical analysis of race in American law. This is what we need to remember and to always, you know, it has nothing to do with teaching Black history in school. It is more about the type of legal scholarship that is critical and analyzing race in American law, reaction to perceived failure of traditional civil rights litigation to produce meaningful reform. You know, and they go into racism is a normal part of American society and has been throughout our history. And Sister Tony, and I know I keep referring back to this Ted Cruz, you know, they don't want us to think about this. Racism is not limited to discrete acts or overt acts of discrimination or violence against minorities, but is also interwoven into the fabric of our lives as to be often unrecognizable. See, that's the thing. It's so subtle sometimes. You don't know. Institutional racism, institutions set up to promote a given racial hierarchy, or as Brother Bamidele talks about, hegemony. I'm just going to keep it moving. But this is a very important slide. this is a conceptual map. Racism as endemic, normal, not abhorrent, nor rare, deeply ingrained legally and culturally. Crosses epistemological boundaries. Critique of civil rights as fundamentally limited. Critique of liberalism, claims of neutrality, objectivity, color blindness, meritocracy as camouflage. Call to context, challenges I can't even pronounce that word, historicism, and recognizes the experiential knowledge of people of color. Storytelling, counter stories, interest, convergence, critical of white studies. So, these Negroes had gotten loose, and we can't have that. And here's a little a slide that gives us microaggressions, stereotype threat, cultural competence, privilege, unconscious bias, structural and historic racism, research, questions and methods, interrupting racism, counter storytelling. And there are some people involved, and I'm going to stop right here and come back to you. We're at 6:03. Are there anything, I might have messed up some things. You might want to interject. Don't want to just hear me talk all the time. All right, so go ahead. Oh, thank you, Bill. So Bill put in here, yes, ahistorical, I can't even pronounce that word.
Ahistoricism.
Ahistoricism, the amnesia Professor Arma warns about in 2000 season. Yes, indeed. Anything else? Anybody else want to comment? Everybody looks so studious, and no, you guys are too heavy. I look at Mona. She's got a bunch of books in the background. Minister Alicia's got Bob Marley. It's not a day go by when I don't play a Bob Marley song in one way or another. I was listening to Exodus today. Yeah.
I have Iron Lion Zion on.
Yes, I'm gonna be iron like a lion in Zion.
Yep.
I'm on the run, but I ain't got no gun. I have to run like a fugitive just to save the life I live. Yeah, I love that song. All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to say something? Go ahead, Malik.
Yes, I'm just, taking in all the comments, but, everything that we're talking about, we have the power to directly impact. Asking an historical enemy to teach our children the knowledge of themselves or to inspire them to their true greatness and potential is really an effort in fertility. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen because, like Dr. Clark always tells us, powerful people do not teach powerless people what they need to know to take their power from them. So our solutions are very simple. It's just that the way we go about it seems so abstract and so insurmountable. For example, I always like to use nature, as many of you know. What would you expect to create or to develop if the wildebeest went to the schools of the lions? They would continue to be on the lion's food chain, period. So European institutions are not designed to liberate the minds of Black people. They're just not. They don't have the will, the desire, or the motivation to do so, because they don't want that power to be taken from them. the best thing Black people can do is what, using that model of Ile Omade, is to teach ourselves. We've been teaching ourselves before anybody else was here. So some of these solutions are political, some are more, complicated, but some, like this critical race theory issue, seems to be it's like we're looking for a complicated answer for a very simplistic problem. Let's take our children out of these killing fields.
I agree with you, but we have to define the problem. We have to, they're giving us something, and it actually has nothing to do with what it is. That's so for a long time, I couldn't even remember how to put the words together. I'd be in service and I'd be trying to say critical race theory, and I couldn't even remember it. But at one point I started, okay, let me do some research, on this. What is this? And then I find out, hey, it's not talking about Toni Morris's books in school, or you know what I mean? But okay, I used to ride on AC Transit. There used to be some guys that would get in the back and they would play 3-card Monte, and then one guy would get on and act like he don't know the people that's doing the thing, and they all working together. I learned that growing up. That's part of my education. Go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to add, Dr. Marimba Ani in Urugu, she talks about the rhetorical ethic, and that concept of the rhetorical ethic is always in my head when she's basically saying that the European has created this ethic where they say things for export. They don't actually consume it. Someone else is supposed to consume it, and they don't have to be held by what was said. It was intended to be consumed, and that consumption is really supposed to mislead you and keep you confused. So this is interesting. This critical race theory it sounds like it's being exported to certain people to consume, to get them riled up. They don't actually believe what they're saying. That's just
that's right. I heard Kwame Ture say this in a speech. He had come to San Francisco State, and he said that we are responding to stimuli given to us by the capitalist system. And I sent a group of people today, Amos Wilson video, where he's talking about really Black populations, even populations where it's their own country, they're in a giant Skinner box, and they are responding to the stimuli in order to create behavior modification. And so you act this way and you get this reward, or you act this way and you don't get the punishment. And so that's it's painful to be Black. It's painful to wear, everybody has locks now, but it was difficult in 1983 when I started. Everybody knows that Egypt is Black now. But in 1976, it was not so easily recognized,
It was in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. Middle of where? Middle of what? East of where? All right. So Bill has been putting things in the chat all along. He's been, a couple of people had to leave, but we're going to keep going on. We had about 29 minutes. I have a few more things. So let me just try to share them. And if you want to, like, I like what Bamidele did last week. He said, you know, stop me on a slide, you know, if you have a question, and you can just get in there. And, you know, we don't have to necessarily end at 6:30, but, you know, want it to be timely. So I was talking about Judge Higginbotham, and here he is on the right here. And can anyone name who's in the middle there?
Johnny Cochran.
Johnny Cochran, peace be upon him. God rest his soul. And who's the brother to the left of him? Does anybody know?
Know him.
Well, I know he was with Clarence Thomas and with the sexual harassment with, I can't think of her name. I know he's in a,
Anita Hill.
Anita Hill.
Yeah. Anita Hill. I think he's an attorney as well, a professor.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but I know I've seen him associated with that case.
Yeah, so he's Charles Ogletree. He's at Harvard Law. He's a founding executive director of the Charles Houston Institute for Race and Justice. He's a prominent legal theorist and has made an international reputation for taking on a hard look at complex issues of law and working to secure the rights guaranteed by the Constitution for everybody under the law. He opened up the offices of Charles Hamilton Houston. Does anybody know who that is? Charles Houston.
I know he's a lawyer, but I don't recall.
Most famous is being Thurgood Marshall's mentor.
That's right. So this is who brought in the case. You know, it was a team that fought the case Brown versus the Board of Education, and Charles Houston was like really the lead. He was very inspirational lawyer for the NAACP, and so this professor has opened offices of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice. He also has written several important books on race and justice, including Life Without Parole, America's Death Penalty, The Presumption of Guilt, the Arrest of Henry Louis Gates Jr., and Race, Class, and Crime in America, The Road to Abolition, the Future of Capital Punishment in the United States, When Law Fails, Making Sense of Miscarriages of Justice, and From Lynch Mobs to the Killing State, Race and the Death Penalty in the United States. He's also written some other things. So, there are some people out here, and this is Judge Higginbotham.
Yeah, and he also was the dean of Howard University School of Law.
Yes.
Okay.
So he wrote this book called In the Matter of Color. And I just want to share some of the table of contents, and he's just looking at race and the American legal process. And he just takes it state by state: Virginia, Massachusetts, New York, South Carolina, Georgia. He's looking at all of the English experience with slavery, the case of James Somerset, the legacy of James Somerset. So he's this is a book actually you should try to get. If you want to understand, historical wise, what's going on. So these are, he's looking at different things. Virginia, the early cases, fear of alliance among whites, among white indentured servants, Indians, and Black. This is part of Bacon's Rebellion.
Yep.
And after Bacon's rebellion, they passed laws so that these people couldn't get together. You know, Native people, white indentured servants, and Black people, African people. Codification of prejudice, the early legislative experience, Christianity, meaningful for whites but irrelevant for Blacks. You know, among the Jamaicans, they have this phrase. They say,
I just played through the first line of Amazing Grace with my terms that I'm identifying here, such as rioters, looters.
During a protest against police brutality.
Okay, stop. So the Jamaicans have this phrase, one law for them, one law for we. You know, and so I just pulled up this thing. My wife was sharing me this. You know that riot that they had during the Trump era, and that mother drove her son across state lines, and he got out and he killed all these people. Well, his trial is going on, and the judge has said you can't refer to the people that he killed as victims. Did you hear what I said?
What
yes, I saw the same article, similar article, and on the flip side, the people that he shot at and killed can be referred to as looters, robbers.
Yes. Ooh. Yes. So this is what critical race theory is talking about. This is what it's talking about. You know, they blame the victim, the man who is sitting in his apartment eating ice cream. A white off-duty police a woman could come in and kill him, you know, and only get 10 years. Anyway, I'm just going to keep on with the table of content.
Before you, can I comment on what you said?
Go ahead. Yes.
I was just talking to my wife about this. It's very important. If we thought I mean, it's bad enough where the so-called judge instructed the DA that the victims cannot be referred to as victims, but more importantly to me, or equally important, is that the defense can refer to the victim as looters and rioters. See, they're setting us up, because that's what they refer to Black Lives Matter. And once we allow them to call victims looters and rioters, to justify them being shot down, we all should take a pause and notice that that's not something that is minor or should be like overlooked, because that's even more critical to me than the DA not being able to refer to the victims as victims. More importantly, where you can refer to victims as looters and rioters. That puts Black Lives Matter and other social justice activists in that what I want to say, the line of sight for violence, justifying the killing of Black Lives Matters and other activists for social justice and change.
Well, haven't other court cases said that it's okay to run, you know, it's all right to run over protesters with your car? You know?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I mentioned Judge Higginbotham is because he wrote a letter, and you can search for this. He wrote a letter to Clarence Thomas when he became judge, and it was like he read him the Riot Act, really. And of course, Clarence Thomas has been, you know, it's very cynical what George Bush did by nominating Clarence Thomas to replace Thurgood Marshall.
Yes.
You know, so this is kind of like what they're talking about. You know, so here you have this righteous judge a person that was standing up for justice, but then he passes away. And what does the system do? They put in somebody like Clarence Thomas. So I encourage you all to read Judge Higginbotham's open letter to Clarence Thomas. What else? So I'm not going to go into it, but it's very, he ends up reading him the Riot Act. And then, of course, Black Robes, White Justice, Judge Bruce Wright. They called him Turn 'em Loose Bruce because he let a brother go. Well, he gave a brother a reasonable bail, and he had to cite a 1947 case where it was precedent that bail is not a punishment. That bail should be commiserate with the crime being charged. And the New York Police Department didn't want this particular person given this particular bail, but Bruce Wright did, and he wrote a book called Black Robes, White Justice.
He looks a little like Dr. J, that sketch.
Like Dr. J, like Lynn Jeffries.
No, Julius Erving.
Oh, this, yeah, it does kind of look, but this is how he really looks.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, he looks different. Yeah, he does. I see what you mean. Yeah. So I think that is pretty much it. Minister Malley said that we should give people their flowers while they're here. So that's why I have this slide in. He told us this past Sunday. So here are your roses. Sorry you can't smell them. All right. And we have about 7 minutes left to continue this conversation. And what is that you put in there, Bill? What is that? Oh, that's
just a link to the story.
Okay.
There's several stories. Lots of news outlets have covered that twisting of the language in favor of the shooter.
Yeah. So I mean, there is no justice in this country. Go ahead, Minister Alicia. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that this all comes back to what we were talking about before about the Skinner box. And like you were saying, okay, so you had somebody in office that was trying to do right by the people. Oh, no, you got to go. We're going to put in somebody else. This says from the outside looking in, okay, so if you try to help the people, then you're going to be ousted. And the people who's kowtowing to the other people, they're the ones who's going to get, the good positions and the praise and et cetera, et cetera. And that also reminds me of this one time, and I'm really fuzzy on how the story goes, but it was like a teacher talking to a student, and the teacher was like, asked the student, don't you want to help Black people? And a little Black boy was like, no, because every time you help Black people, you get killed. It's these things that in that Skinner box, if we can understand that, like that's bigger than we think, with this system. And we see it all the time. It just keeps happening, because it's a control issue and a behavioral issue. This is how we want you to behave. If you do not, here's your punishment. Just like I was talking about earlier with Haiti. If you fight and you actually win against them, it reminds me of white men can't jump. Sometimes when you win, you actually lose. Sometimes when you lose, you actually win. Sometimes when you win or lose, you actually tie. So it's one of those things that's like, you have to fight knowing that it's just a righteous fight. It's just a righteous battle, because you have to let go of that. I'm going to get rewarded. And we have to let go of understanding what their punishment may be and try to work together because we are in that box because they keep trying to. I mean, some of us have gotten out of the box. However, yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. A lot of it goes back to that Skinner box.
That's true. That's true. Go ahead, Shango.
It makes me think about the Haitians. The Haitians will be beat and crucified until the island no longer exists, because they'll never forgive those people for beating Napoleon, for beating the British, for beating the Spanish. They'll never get over that. And so this is why when I look at Haiti, I got the picture of the man riding the horse with his whip, whipping them. And at the same time, we're welcoming in the Afghanistan people. So welcome to America.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, and Neely Fuller says this, you're not supposed to analyze them. You know, they do all kind of studies on Black people, all kind of, you know, pathology or whatever, but you're not supposed to analyze them. Then that's you know, don't shine a light on what we're doing, you know. So and that's the reaction that people are having. They don't want. So you have people actually saying that the Civil War wasn't fought over slavery. You know, you actually have people saying that. You know, I saw someone on the news saying, well, they're distorting the history of my ancestors. You know, you actually have people saying that. But I just wanted to talk tonight about critical race theory, and just to shine a light on, it's not what's being publicized. It has to do with race and the law in the United States and a history of that. And those two sources, In the Matter of Color by Judge Higginbotham and Black Robes, White Justice, gives us just an inkling of the history of race relations under the law in the United States, and challenging that. I don't like when people say, "Oh, I don't look at color." That's a red flag when people say that to me. I don't see color.
Yes.
Why not? I'm a 6'5" Black man with locks to my waist. You don't see me. You know. I had a dream. There was a dream book I had, and it had different. You flip in the book, and there's different symbols, and this means, when you dream about this means that. When you dream, if you dream about a Negro, that means bad luck. So if I dream about my father, that's bad. You know what I mean? My grandmother, she would buy stockings that said, what did it say, flesh color? But it was never her flesh color. You know what I mean? So these are the things. Now, I was in it's not always, it's unconscious sometimes, but the result is still the same. So I remember being in a psychology class, and it was every now and then they would do this thing called a Truss Walk, and they would blindfold you, and they would have someone lead you around campus, and you're supposed to trust that person. Well, I'm 6'5", almost 6'6". Back then, my fro was out this far, and I would always invariably get people that would lead me around, and they would be 5'3". So they would lead me into branches, and they would hit me in the head, I don't think that they were mean. I don't think they were trying to do this. It's just they could walk underneath the branch, but I couldn't. But the result is the same.
Yes.
I was getting smacked in the head. I couldn't see it coming. You know, and that's the way we are. That's the way our children are. You know, okay, we're old enough to know better. We're old enough to analyze, but our children don't know. And that's why we need to be telling them, even if they're not in a school like Ile Omide, we need to be telling them continually, hey, this is the way it is, you know, and everybody has that talk. Yeah. So warn our sons not to get sloshed with their white friends. What is sloshed, Bobby? I don't even know what that is. Go ahead, Bobby.
I don't know. Slosh, spell it. I'll look it up.
Oh, you
thinking drunk.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Is that what? Drunk or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Now that sounds familiar. Anyway, that was the point of this session tonight, to just bring us all up to speed on critical race theory. I really am thankful for all the comments and observations and sharings in the chat this evening on that subject. It's a critical story, and it has a history that has been obfuscated by the mass media and the system. I'm not going to say what Peter Tosh called it, the shitstrom. I'm not going to say that, but oh wait, I already said it. Sorry, but you know, it's obfuscated by the system, and as many things are. So always analyze, ask questions. Don't think you're crazy for, well, hey, wait a minute, this don't make sense. Hey, wait a minute, we got a pandemic, but the United States gave money to the place that it originated from, and they were studying bats to infect human beings. Okay, all right. I better close now. All right, so
the NSA they heard you.
Yeah, I know. No, the National Institutes of Health, who is the institute that funded Wuhan, they've admitted that. They've admitted that.
No, that was Dr. Fauci. That wasn't them.
And let me just ask you, Shango.
Yes, sir.
If you were to hear a guy talk like Dr. Fauci, wouldn't you think he was a con man just listening to his voice?
Yeah.
I mean, really, I know that's stereotypical. Some people, you know, have, but just listening to him, he sounds like a con man.
Yeah. A wealthy one, too.
All right. Well, I guess I've stirred enough trouble tonight. Next week, we're going to have a brother. His name is, some of you may know him, Kinara Sankofa. He is an entrepreneur that lives in Houston. He's a poet, and he's got a lot of things going on for him. And I asked him to come and join us next week. So Brother Kinara Sankofa will be joining us next week. And it's 6:35, and we're going to conclude. I'm going to end like Malcolm would say, don't let anybody irk you or provoke you. But at the same time, we don't teach you to turn the other cheek. We don't at any time, at any time, teach you to turn the other cheek. All right. Are there any other comments before we sign off?
Yeah, is that the brother who used to live in Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Gotcha.
You know what I found out though, that he actually was one of the Castleers. Those of you that are from Oakland, there's a there was a great choir, high school choir in Oakland at Castlemont High School called the Castleers, and they were under the direction of this brother by the name of Phil Reeder. And they went all over the world touring as a high school ensemble choir. And we were just talking today, and he says, I mentioned the Castleers. He says, oh, I used to be in the Castle. I was one of the Castleers. So I don't know if he'll be doing any singing, but he has a book on poetry and other things. So, he's a handsome guy. So I'm sure that he'll be pleasant on the eye for some of us that are in the audience. All right. So make it a date, and don't be late next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Black Knowledge Matters. The password is 2020 because we want to keep our vision sharp. All right. Life, prosperity, and health. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Live up.